The pews in the chapel were a sea of empty mahogany. At the front, a simple urn sat among white roses, all that remained of David, my husband of 10 years. The officiant's voice was a gentle drone, but I was fixed on the door, waiting for it to open. It never did. Nobody from my family came, not my parents, not my sister Claire, not even my best friend, Elena. Their absence was a final, deafening statement. What they didn't know was that this betrayal would unearth a truth so profound it would shatter our shared history forever. My name is Grace. I am 34, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a wife. Now I am a widow, about to discover my entire life was built on a lie everyone else had agreed to keep. David and I met in college, a quiet art historian who saw the world in colors I couldn't yet perceive. When he was diagnosed with a rare sarcoma 5 years into our marriage, we became a team of two, our love a private fortress against the world's noise. My family, however, saw his illness as an inconvenient burden, an unwelcome disruption to the image of normalcy they cherished. "You're wasting your best years," my mother sighed during one of her brief, obligatory visits, her eyes scanning our modest living room with poorly concealed disdain. My sister grew distant, her calls now only about her own life's trivial dramas. Elena started canceling our plans, her voice laced with a discomfort that felt like judgment. "It's just so hard to see him like that," she said, as if his suffering was an imposition on her peace. I forgave them, pouring every ounce of myself into David's care, choosing to believe that their distance was born of helplessness, not heartlessness. He died at sunrise on a Tuesday, his hand growing cold in mine. The silence after his last breath was the loudest sound I'd ever heard, a void that swallowed every memory of joy. I called my parents, my voice breaking. "We'll send flowers," my mother said, her tone as formal as if discussing a business acquaintance. "The service is Friday." "We have a prior commitment," my father said in the background, his voice firm. That commitment, I'd later learn, was a golf tournament with his buddies. Claire was swamped with the kids' soccer playoffs. Elena's text read, "I'm out of town for a work conference. My heart is with you." Each message was a nail in the coffin of my old life, sealing me into a solitude I had never imagined. So I stood alone. A handful of David's friends, his kind oncologist, and our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gable, formed the tiny constellation of mourners, their presence a bittersweet balm. As people filed out with soft words and sympathetic touches, the chapel door finally opened. It was not a mourner, but a man in a dark suit. "Mrs. Thorne, I was your husband's attorney." He pressed a card into my hand. "David instructed me to give you this after the service. He was very specific." That evening, in the crushing silence of our home, where every shadow still held his shape, I called the attorney, Robert Carson. He agreed to see me on Monday. I spent the weekend in a limbo of grief, moving through the rooms like a ghost, haunted by the echo of laughter that would never come again. On Monday, in an office that smelled of leather and old paper, he slid a sealed envelope across his desk. "He asked me to ensure you were alone when you received this. He wanted to protect you until the end." Back home, my hands trembled as I broke the wax seal, David's personal touch. Inside was a letter in his beloved sloping handwriting and a stack of documents. As I read, the floor fell away and the world I knew dissolved into ashes. David had been quietly investigating a secret for the last 2 years of his life. The medical bills my parents had so grudgingly helped with, David had discovered my father had been involved in a significant embezzlement scheme at his firm a decade prior. A secret, hushed-up settlement was the true source of their comfortable lifestyle and their constant anxiety about money. But there was more. Printouts of emails between my parents and sister discussed David's illness as a financial and social liability. They feared that in his pain and medication, he might have stumbled upon their secret, or that my grief would be a drain on their ill-gotten resources. Their plan was clinical, emotional withdrawal. Isolate me, make me utterly reliant so I'd be malleable, willing to accept their terms for my future. Grace has always been the soft one, my mother wrote. She'll come back to us when she's broke and broken. Then we can control the narrative. The final blow was a separate chain of messages, copied from Elena's email account. My father had paid her a substantial, regular sum. Her role was to systematically distance herself, to report back on my mental and emotional state, and to ensure I had no strong support system outside of them. Her work conference was an all-expenses-paid trip to the Bahamas, a bonus for her successful alienation. David had hired a private investigator when he noticed the pattern, when he saw the light in my eyes dimming not just from his pain, but from their calculated neglect. Their absence at the funeral wasn't just cruelty, it was the final strategic phase of the plan. It was meant to be the ultimate abandonment, the breaking point that would send me crawling back to them, willing to agree to anything for a shred of belonging. A terrifying calm settled over me, cold and clear. David had also left a will. His unstable freelance work had been quietly brilliant. He had curated a private collection for an extremely wealthy anonymous client for years. His commission, wisely invested, meant I was not just comfortable, I was financially independent for life. He had also set up a legal fund for me to use if I ever need to fight. He knew I would. The next morning, I dressed in a sharp black suit, David's favorite on me. My first visit was to my parents' pristine, silent home. I found them having coffee in the sunroom, the picture of retirement ease. "Grace, we were about to call you," my mother said, rising with a pasted-on look of concern that didn't reach her eyes. I dropped the folder on the glass table with a sound that made them both flinch. "Explain." My father paled as he flipped through the pages. His bluster rose first. "This is an invasion of privacy. Where did you get this? That sick husband of yours?" "That saint of a husband spent his dying days protecting me from you." I laid it out in cold, flat tone. The embezzlement, the conspiracy, the transactional betrayal. The funeral was your test, and I failed it. I didn't break. My mother sobbed, but they were tears of self-pity, not remorse. "We did it for the family, to protect us all." "You did it for yourselves," I said, every word precise. I looked at my father, a stranger now. "The investigator has all the originals. You will sign over the deed to the lake house, the only clean asset you have left, by week's end. Consider it reparations for a lifetime of emotional fraud. If you do not, if you ever contact me again except through my lawyer, every page of this goes to the district attorney and the press." I received a letter from my mother last month, the envelope thick with pleas and justifications. I didn't open it. I took a pen, wrote the word "no" in bold black letters on the front, and mailed it back. Nobody from my family came to my husband's funeral. They thought their absence was the final note, the period at the end of my story. But they were wrong. Their silence was not an ending. It was the blank space on the page, the hushed void where I finally found the courage to pick up the pen. David's love was not just a comfort in life, it was an armor in death, a legacy of truth that shielded me from their lies. He taught me that the most profound loyalty sometimes is revealed not in who shows up, but in the devastating, liberating truth they leave behind to light your way out of the darkness. And in that light, I am finally, unshakably free.